be giving you guys some announcements this morning, starting off with a new series. We all know that you guys love new series. I love new series. But it is called Free Money. Not literally free money that you can grab out of the sky. It's not gonna rain money like in most games. But still, it's gonna be an awesome series. You don't want to miss it. It is going to be fun to watch. Now, also, we got a special treat. Youth Group is back, and it is at Wallport Foursquare, and it's for kids 11 and up, and it is awesome. It is really fun. It is like one of the it is the funnest place, hosted by and it is also at 6 o'clock on Tuesdays, and also it is hosted by Associate Pastor Jeremy Parker. And now we also got Family Camp Out. Make sure to bring your s'more stuff. It'll be fun. It is a camp out, and who doesn't like vacations? I mean, me personally, I love vacations. But now, let's get our worship on!
We are continuing in a series today that we have entitled Free Money. Free Money. As our hope over these next several weeks is that you would begin to find some freedom financially. We begin to find some freedom financially by looking at some biblical solutions to everyday money problems. Anybody got some money problems in the house, right? Now, just in case you weren't here last week, I do want to kind of set some of your minds at ease, who maybe you're at that place where you think, like, I kind of sense where this series is going. Like, I know where the pastor's going. Like, I'm on to your Jedi Master Mind Tricks pastor. Like, I know that in a series like this, I've sat through enough church services that at some point in this series, pastor is going to be asking for my money. He's going to be passing the offering buckets around. And hey, listen, if that's you, could I just encourage you, put your mind at ease. We're not going to be passing offering buckets around this series, and nor are we going to be launching into some kind of church generosity campaign. No, the reason we're taking the next several weeks to talk about money is the same reason Jesus talked so much about money. As when you read through the Gospels, this might surprise you to find that Jesus actually talks about the topic of money and finances more than heaven, hell, prayer, and faith combined. Not because God cares about money, but because God cares about you. God cares about you. He cares about how the stress of money problems can steal our peace of mind. He cares about how it can rob us of sleep, how it can blind us from opportunities, how it can even damage our relationships, how it can even affect how we see our self-worth. In fact, I can still remember when Holly and I were first married and we went into the home mortgage loan place to try to get a loan on our first house. And and I remember that the loan officer, he pulls out Holly's like pristine credit report. Like it's beautiful, it looks perfect. And he's just talking so glowingly, smile on his face, like Holly is like this divine angel of finances, right? But then it gets to me. And he pulls out this like crinkled, ratty piece of paper. It's like all crumpled up, coffee stains, highlighter marks. And I'll just never forget like the look on his face. It was like, how could a girl like her, decide to choose a guy like you with such a poor credit score, right? Like it's like the whole time it's just, he could not wrap his mind around it. I remember just coming away feeling like such a horrible self-worth because I had these money problems going into our marriage. And so anyway, I bring that up because again, the reason God talks about so much, not because he cares about money, but because he cares about you. And so last week we kicked things off by giving a money master class, if you will, by talking about the need to define the relationship when it comes to money. By understanding that often our problem with money is not so much our lack of, but our relationship with. In fact, we see this in Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. Here, Jesus speaking, he says, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Now, what's interesting about that last statement is I think if you didn't know, like if we didn't know how that verse ended, I think most of us would expect Jesus to say, you cannot serve both God and Satan, right? Like that's the battle, isn't it? Like that's the struggle. Like I come in here like man, Pastor, I'm feeling pretty good. I can tell you, I've not worshiped Satan once this week. Like I'm in a good direction. haven't drawn any pentagrams. Like I'm feeling good. But what's interesting though is Jesus doesn't go that direction. No, where he goes is he says you can't serve both God and money. God and money, because I think Jesus understood something we got to get. He knew that for most of us, the temptation, the draw wouldn't be to chase after Satan, but rather the draw, the temptation, the struggle would be to chase after the materialism of the day. Because truth is, when it comes to Satan, he could care less if you worship him. He just doesn't want you to worship God. He just doesn't want you to worship God. Now, to be clear in this, I think it's important to note that what Jesus is not saying just as much as clarifying what he is saying. See, something you got to understand with what Jesus is not saying in this, he's not saying that money in and of itself is bad. Like it's somehow bad to have nice things or somehow bad to have nice stuff. Jesus isn't advocating poverty here. Like just because you drive a 16-year-old Trailblazer, that doesn't make you any more holy than driving a Beamer makes you a sinner. Again, this isn't not about advocating poverty. This is about being in opposition of idolatry. Being in opposition of idolatry, because while money can make for a great tool in our life, how many of you know it makes for a terrible taskmaster when it comes to our life? In fact, in the original text, it doesn't reference God and money, but God and mammon. God and mammon. Now, mammon was sort of a lowercase g god that was common during that time. It was the lowercase g god of the Assyrians that people would often pray to and go to when they were in financial need. And so when Jesus is talking about being enslaved to money, he's not talking about money as much as he's talking about the spirit behind it. The spirit behind it, the worry behind it, the anxiety behind it, the discontentment in chasing after it. As listen, it's not a problem to have money. You just got to understand, you just can't let money have you. It's not a problem to have money. You just can't let money have you. You can't let it have your ambitions and have your dreams and even have your heart. It's interesting in that passage, that verse there, Jesus, it kind of warns us and challenges us to avoid the love, the love of money. Now, when he's saying that, he's not speaking in terms of the actual currency itself. Like nobody pulls out a $100 bill out of their wallet and goes, boy, Franklin, you are looking good today, right? Like I like this hairdo you got. Like business up front, party in the back. Like not many people could pull this off, but you can, Franklin. No, he's not talking about that. No, nobody's in love with money in terms of the currency, but rather we fall in love with what we think money will do for us, what it promises to supply. Things like safety and security and fulfillment and provision. Let's check out how Jesus speaks to this. In verse 26, it says, look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Again, this is not about God caring about our stuff or money. It's about God who cares about you. He cares about you. As it goes on, it says, can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So do not worry. Do not worry. See, again, when we talk about financial freedom, you gotta understand we're not talking so much about rich or poor. He's not promising that every single one of us will be the next Jeff Bezos, right? But he's saying that you don't have to live life like Chicken Little. You don't have to live your life always worried about the sky falling, or always worried about the stock market falling, or always worried about the house market falling. But that in defining the relationship for us, Jesus reminds us that money doesn't have to be my master the more I understand that God is my provider. The more I understand that God is my provider. In fact, can I tell you this is why the principle of the tithe is so important, what it's all about? We're in this act of worship by returning back to God the first 10% of our income. Not only am I acknowledging who my provider is, in fact, that's why we say we return the tithe, not give the tithe. It's because we recognize it all belongs to Him. It all came from Him. In fact, the Bible says that every good and perfect gift comes from above. It comes from Him. But not just that, it's through this principle of the tithe. And putting my trust in Him, I'm reminded of just how trustworthy He is. Just how trustworthy He is. In fact, we see this in Malachi 3 verse 10. It says, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing, key word there, blessing, that there will not be room enough to store it. Now, again, I say the key word there is really blessing. Is here when it speaks of God's provision, speaking about so much more than just money, right? Yeah, but then when I actually put my trust in Him, especially in this area of finances, I find God growing my confidence. I find God growing my faith in Him. As I can't tell you how many times, especially when Holly and I were first married, when I could think back to when I was working as a youth pastor / window washer. And I'm pretty sure that I paid more out in taxes than I ever made, right? And so, I'd come home and we'd be working on the budget, working on the finances. And I'll be honest, there were so many times that we looked at our checkbook and things didn't add up. Financially, things did not add up. And yet, can I tell you, time and time again, God constantly provided. God constantly provided. Talk about getting your faith stretched and grown, your confidence in reminding yourself and discovering, man, God is my provider. He's my provider. Now, I say all that, though, to tell you that that's actually what we're not talking about today. So, again, put some of you at ease, see, I knew where it was going, right? But listen, today, I don't want to talk about the first 10, but the other 90. I don't want to talk about the first 10, but the other 90, because here's the thing. If the reason Jesus talks so much about money was not because he cares about money, but because he cares about us, cares about how it affects us, how it can have a hold on so many of us, wouldn't it make sense that what we do with the other 90 matters to God just as much as what we do with the first 10? Come on, right? Would it speak to the fact that how we manage the other 90 matters just as much to God as what we do with the first 10? As what if the core of so many of our money problems was not a lack of God's provision, but a problem with our stewardship of that provision? Look, I want to share with you a formula for financial freedom. Now, I don't make a lot of guarantees, but I'm going to guarantee you this formula, if you put this formula into practice, you will begin to experience a life of freedom when it comes to your finances. You ready for this? You excited for it? Like, anybody excited for it? Like, one person. Excellent. Okay. But I'm telling you, this is good. And of course, the beauty, by the way, too, about this, I hope I'm not building this up too much, but what I love about this formula, too, is that, like, you don't even have to be good at mathematics. Like, you can be a mathematics dropout like me in school and still get this formula because it doesn't even have any numbers to it. So you're ready. This is what I believe sort of the biblical formula for financial freedom. You ready? Here it is that when what you spend is less than what you make, it equals freedom. When what you spend is less than what you make, it equals freedom. Now, I know what some of you are saying and thinking to yourself, thank you, Captain Obvious. Yes. Okay, right? It's like, I get that. Okay, if I just spent less, made more, I'd have a lot more freedom in my finances. But listen, here's the thing. It's one thing to know what to do. It's another thing to know how to do it. As we're going to get incredibly practical over the next couple of weeks, this week and next week. As next week, we're actually going to look at the second part of that equation. We're going to talk about how to make more money. Anyone want to make more money? And listen, it's not going to be any scam type stuff, no pyramid scheme, not going to encourage you to sell essential oils. Though if you do that, that's a great thing, I'm sure. But we're going to be looking at what the Bible has to say, what the Bible actually has to say, biblical principles when it comes to making more by making the most out of what you've got. By making the most out of what you've got. So that's next week. But before we get to that, I think we have to start right here with the first part of that equation, because before we can talk about making more, I think we've got to start with talking about how to spend less. How to spend less, because the truth is, if we never figure out how to spend less, it doesn't matter how much you make, or how much you work, or even how much God blesses you. I'm telling you, if you don't learn how to control your spending, it'll never feel like you're ever getting ahead. It'll never feel like enough. In fact, there's a great couple of verses that speaks this in Haggai chapter 1, verses 5 through 6. It says, "Now this is what the Lord Almighty says, give careful thought to your ways. You have planted much, but harvested little. You eat, but you never have enough. You drink, but never have your fill. You put on clothes, but are not warm. You earn wages, only to put them in a purse with holes in it." Now to kind of put this in a little bit more practical terms, you almost kind of think of it like this. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever hit the gym or spent some time in the gym. Maybe you got on a treadmill and you got on it and you were working out hard, like for 30 minutes, only to look down and see that you burned 200 calories. Anyone been there? It's kind of discouraging, that in and of itself. Now add it within the bigger perspective of oftentimes the average American diet. So let me kind of put this in perspective for you. So let me introduce you to my friend Oreo. Oreo, right here. Like, any fans of Oreo cookies? So check this out. So 3 cookies, catch this, is 160 calories. That's not including the milk. Like, you throw the milk in there, I'm telling you, you're going to go way over the 200 calories you just spent all that time trying to work off. And I know what you're thinking, but I worked so hard. I worked hard. But yeah, you ate hard too, right? Or how about this one, Krispy Kreme donuts? Anyone ever gotten to experience the joy of a Krispy Kreme donut? They're pretty amazing. There's one up in Vancouver. It's awesome. But one donut, check this out, 200 calories. That's your whole 30 minutes right there. And that's just one. That's just one Krispy Kreme donut. And let's be real, there's nobody that just ever eats one Krispy Kreme donut. Like Jesus is the only one who has the power to resist the temptation of more than one of these donuts. Outside of Jesus, you know you're going at least 3 deep. You're eating at least 3 of those things when you open up the box. And I know what a few of you are thinking, like, well, this is a great illustration, but this doesn't apply to me. Like I'm all about nutrition. I'm all about what I eat. I'm a vegan. I filter my water 4 times over. And so for you, you can feel like this illustration is applied to you because you eat things like this. Let's see the next picture. An avocado. Avocado, yes. But do you know how many calories are in an avocado? 227 calories. 227 calories. As listen, if you get anything out of this message, this right here is worth the price of admission. That all the time you've been living on bland guacamole, you could have been saving yourself some calories by choosing to instead eat a Krispy Kreme donut, right? Which I don't know about you, but I'd say it tastes way better than anything you can make with an avocado. Here's what I'm trying to get at. Is that just like it's been said, you cannot outwork a bad diet? How many know, listen, you cannot outwork a bad budget either. It doesn't matter how much you work, doesn't matter how many hours you put in. If your appetite for stuff and things is greater than what you got coming in, there's always going to be a deficit. As you can never outwork a greedy heart, you can never outwork a discontent heart, you can never outwork a coveting heart. Again, if we don't control our appetite, I'm telling you, eventually our appetite will control us. Will control us. In fact, there's actually a 4-letter word for this. There's no small kids in here, so I can say it freely and without abandon. You ready for the 4-letter word that speaks to this very thing? Simply called debt. Debt, right? In fact, Proverbs at 22:7, it says this, it says, the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. Like they don't call it MasterCard by accident, right? As can I tell you, if I was the enemy, I mean, think about this, like put yourselves in the enemy's shoes for a moment. Like if we were the enemy, I think certainly if I was, this enemy the Bible says loves to seek to kill, steal, and destroy our lives, I don't think I'd come at you with like heroin or narcotics. If I was the enemy, I'd come at you with car payments. I'd come at you with car payments because I wrote it like this. If he can keep you in debt, he can keep you from your destiny. If he can keep you in debt, he can keep you from getting married. Right? Like I can't tell you how many couples that I've talked with over the years who are like, Pastor, we'd love to get married, but we just can't afford it right now. Wedding costs too much. Living together just costs so much. Or how about this one? If he can keep you in debt, he can keep you from becoming parents. All right? Like, well, we would have kids, but the numbers just don't look very good on paper. Like $10,000, $20,000 just for delivery of a child, and that's not even getting to diapers, right? Or if he can keep you in debt, he can keep you from ever taking a vacation. Listen, I know the Oregon coast is beautiful, but 4 staycations in a row, how many of us would all agree might be a little much, even for the coast? Or how about this one? If he can keep you in debt, he can keep you from, as we talked about last week, being rich enough so that you can bless those around you. Being rich enough so you can bless those around you. Listen, I'm convinced the reason why most people struggle with being generous is not because they're stingy, but because they're strapped. But because they're strapped financially. In fact, I think the numbers bear this out. Did you know that nearly 1/3 of Americans pay just the minimum on their credit card every single month? Only to wonder why personal debt never seems to go down. Here's another one. The average U.S. household it carries $16,000 in credit card debt. $16,000. Here's a couple others. Take a look at these. The number of people over 60 with student loan debt, check this out, has quadrupled just in the last decade. And then this last one, Americans as a whole have $1.2 trillion in student loans. And look, I share these stats with you. Listen, not to discourage you or depress you or to bring up some bad memories or moments with your finances, but to give you some hope. Because in case you don't already know, we serve a God who has a pretty good track record when it comes to bailing us out when it comes to the debts in our life. Pretty good track record of that. Whether that debt be spiritual, relational, or even as we're talking about today, financial. As look, with the time we got left, I want to give you 3 prayers. 3 prayers you can pray that hopefully, I believe, are going to begin to set some of you free financially today who maybe feel trapped by debt. And here's the first prayer. The first prayer is this, is God, give me self-control. God, give me self-control, because I'm telling you, you'll never learn to master your wallet if you never learn to master your wants. You'll never learn to master your wallet if you never learn to master your wants. As again, if I was the enemy and I was trying to hook you and catch you with debt, I wouldn't just put a hook in the water. I'd put some bait on it. I'd put some bait on it. In fact, I've got some kind of common baits that I know the enemy has hooked me with more than a few times. And see if I can, my fishing skills are little to be desired. You know, I should probably practice this illustration before I tried it, so. There we go. There we go, yes. Whew, about time. All right, yes. This is one that has gotten me more than a few times. Any coffee fans? Now here's the thing about this particular bait is you might not realize this, but if you know, like on the surface, it doesn't seem like much. When you buy one just by itself, like maybe, $3, $4, get a real large one, it's like $6. But if you bought one of these, like every day before work, do you realize it adds up to being $1,200 a year? $1,200 a year. That's $1,200 going to a company whose logo, catch this, is a siren. Now, I don't know if you know Greek mythology, but a siren was a mermaid, an evil mermaid that would sing and lure sailors to drive their boats to crash into the shore. And we spend our money on this, right? Now some of you are like, okay, well, that's not for me. I'm not a coffee fan, so it doesn't really affect me. All right. So this one is maybe a little more up your alley. About to give up on this fishing pole business, but yeah. This is a big one. Caught a big one, folks. This one right here is maybe for you, it's not, for you, it's not coffee, it's stuff. Maybe you had a bad week and this is like your way to kind of remedy it is to go on a shopping therapy. And so you got to get some new clothes and some new shoes. And of course, part of the reason I did Nike is because you might not know this or not, but the good news with when you shop at Nike is they have this thing called a Nike credit card. And the Nike credit card, if you apply for it, you can go 18 months without paying anything. That's the good news. Bad news is that 18 months comes up. And so for some of you, your prayer is not, God, give me self-control. Your prayer is, Jesus, I need you to return, preferably before 18 months. Like your financial plan is this right here. It's the return of Christ, right? For others of you, and I'm giving up on this fishing pole. The other one is you're like, well, that's silly. I would never pay full price. I would never go to Nike. That's why I go to Nike Outlet. Because for you, this is the bait. This 50% off, this deal. Like even my wife is incredibly frugal. She shops at Goodwill most of the times. But every once in a while, we'll be walking through a store and she'll be like, "Hun, this is 50% off." To which I'm like, yeah, that means that we're 50% on, right? And then she'll take advantage of my lack of mathematical skills, and she does these crazy numbers, and she's like, yeah, but think about it this way, is if we buy 3, That's basically like if one's 50% off, we buy 3, that's like we're getting 1 for free. And if we buy 4, it's like we're making money now, right? And so again, for some of us, it's that. Or how about this one? This one gets a lot of us. Car, yeah. In fact, some of you, this is the problem, is your car is about this size, right? And so maybe you'll be pulling up in the driveway and you look over, you see your neighbor's car, which is bigger, it's better, runs on the sun, runs on batteries. And it's amazing how we'll justify so much debt for something like this. So much debt, which might add, depreciates so much, but we'll justify you know what? I need to get a new car. I need to get one with a battery because I want to be a good steward of the planet. I want to save the environment. But listen, can I just encourage you is that, hey, I'm all for, protecting the future of the planet. But don't do so at the expense of the future of your kids and your family and your finances. Just telling you. So again, we'll buy into it. We'll take the bait so often. And listen, here's the worst part of all these things, is that how many know that once you get it, there comes a point where you don't even want it anymore. Where once you get the shoes, once you get in the car and the new car smell fades, once you spend the money on the big screen, they come out with one that's even bigger, curved, 4D. Some of you are like, I didn't know they had 4D. I'm going to check that out today. But listen, I share that, and look, the reason why I can say that, why so often we'll invest in these once only to just tire of them, is case in point, kind of the proving point for my theory here, is what's known as the self-storage industry. The self-storage industry. Listen, did you know that before 1960, the self-storage industry never existed? There were no self-storage units. But now today, 48,500 facilities exist. It's a $36 billion industry with more storage units today than Starbucks and McDonald's combined. Every year, $65 million in storage units actually get auctioned off. Or actually, let me rephrase that. That's $65 million worth of junk, of things that we couldn't live without, that now we struggle to know what to do with. As I wrote it like this, and my prayer is that this resonates with you, is because when you work to pay off debt, you're not working for your future dreams, but your past desires. You're no longer working for your future dreams, but your past desires. So now you can't build the life you really want because you're still paying for things that you used to want. So what do? How do we begin to turn the corner and break free? Well, listen, I think for some of us, it starts by learning to say no for a little while so that we can say yes to the rest of our lives. Learning to say no for a little while so we can say yes to the rest of our lives. Listen, here's the second prayer we got to get is this prayer of God help me not to buy now and pay later. This is an incredibly practical prayer, right? God, help me not to buy now and pay later. Proverbs 21:5 says this, as the plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. This is why when you go into a car dealership, you'll never go in there, see a car that you're interested in, and the car dealer, the car salesman go, hey, you know what? Why don't you just take your time and think about this? Like, you know what? Why don't you go home, talk it over with your wife, look over your budget, and make sure that you really got the margin to be able to afford this car. Like, they never say that. What do they say? What's it going to take for me to get you in this car today? Right? Like, to get you to drive home with this car? Because I'm telling you, this car is at the low interest rate of 35% for the rest of your life, and it's not going to be here forever. Listen, and again, that's sort of what the voice of debt, the debate of debt, constantly yells out to us. It's this rush to get into the new house, this rush to get the new thing, the rush to get the new vehicle. But listen, you want to know what the opposite of rushing is? Are you ready? It's to make a plan. It's to make a plan. Because here's the thing, you can wander into debt, but you can never wander out of it. You can easily wander into debt, but you can never easily just wander out of it. And so I want to give you a simple plan with the time we have left for those who feel like they're in a hole financially. The first one is this, is you got to learn to stop digging. You got to commit to stop digging. How do you start to get out of a financial hole? By first learning to stop digging yourself deeper into debt. Right? Listen, for some of us, maybe the best takeaway you can put into practice from this message is to go home tonight and actually sit down with your spouse, or maybe if you're just by yourself, maybe just sit down with yourself and say, self, what do I have to say no to now so that I can say yes to for the rest of my life? So maybe for some of you guys, it's like, could maybe it be to your advantage to say no to playing golf like every single weekend, right? Like maybe I can drag this out a little bit longer. Or maybe some of you ladies who feel like you've got to get your hair done all the time. Actually, I take that back. My wife's a hairstylist. I want you to get your hair done as much as possible. But maybe nails. How about nails? Like again, some of you ladies are like, whoa, don't mess with my nails. Hold on, right? So again, I'm not saying to never get your nails done, but maybe you don't need to get them done like every 3 weeks. Right? But I've got this date coming up. Hey, listen, can I tell you, when my wife and I first started dating, there were some things that really caught my attention about her. Like the fact that she had amazing eyes, beautiful hair, and she wore a Dallas Cowboys sweatshirt, right? I get a lot. See? But the one thing I can tell you, I never caught my attention in our whole dating life. And in fact, I've never ever heard a guy ever say in regards to another lady is, check out the nails on her. Those nails are amazing. Like nobody ever says that, right? Or how about, family? Family, kids, we love our TV. I love TV, but do we really need Disney Plus, Discovery Plus, History Channel Plus? You got to go down those Hulu Plus, right? Like all these pluses that are starting to add up to be major minuses when it comes to our finances. Like maybe we don't need them all for now. Which brings us to something else when it comes to this plan, is to learn to pray before you pay. Pray before you pay. I had a pastor friend of mine who'd often offered this advice, saying that when he was faced with a financial decision he hadn't budgeted for, oftentimes if it was under $100, he would pray for a day. If it was between $100 to $1,000, he would pray for a week. And if it was over $1,000, he would pray for a month. As I wonder how many poor financial decisions in our lives, poor financial decisions maybe we drove here in that could have been avoided with just living out that concept right there. Learning to pray before you pay. And then finally, you got to learn to make a budget. As I don't think it was coincidence that among those stats I shared earlier when it came to the debt crisis in America, is that in that same study it revealed that a majority of Americans, 57% to be exact, have never taken the time to form some kind of budget. And look, when I say budget, I simply mean choosing to tell your money where to go as opposed to always wondering where it went. So an effective budget, when we talk about budgeting, identifies where your money is going each month. Like it categorizes, is it going to like coffee or food or gas? It breaks that down. And then it helps you to know where your money has to go. Having categories of bills, like there's bills I know that come due every single month, and the debts that I need to pay. And then finally, it clarifies where you want your money to go. We're talking about financial goals because it's hard to say no to something now if you don't clearly know what you're wanting to say yes to in the future. So maybe for you, it's retirement, right? Maybe that yes for you is a vacation. Maybe that yes for you is the margin to be rich enough so that you can be a blessing to others. Again, when it comes to seeing that prayer, God, help me not to buy now and pay later. It's a prayer that we got to realize we've got a part to play in it, and that part is to make a plan, to take some time to make a plan. In fact, as a church, we really wanted to be able to help you with this beyond just what I could cover on a weekend. And so being that it's a series called Free Money, I thought it would be kind of nice to give away some free stuff, some free resources to be able to help you step into some freedom financially. And so we're going to be giving away a free Dave Ramsey book called Total Money Makeover to anybody, everyone who wants one. And so we actually have a link I think we get a link on the next slide there. Yeah, if you go to newport4.org/free money, there's just a little category there. If you just type out, fill in the information, we'll make sure we send one of those books to you this week. And it's a great resource because it helps you to really develop a budget, gives you some steps on how to break free from debt beyond just what we talked about today. Which brings us to the last prayer. We'll wrap up with this. Is this prayer, and this is maybe the most important prayer right here, which is, God, fill my heart. God, fill my heart. As again, I'm just telling you why this is so important is because until you deal with the heart issue, how many know you're always going to struggle with money issues? Until you deal with the heart issue, you're always going to struggle with money issues. Psalm 37:4 says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. Now, I do have to say this may be one of the most misquoted, misunderstood scriptures in the Bible. As so many of us, I think sometimes we read this, maybe we even quote it back to ourselves and use it almost as a justification to kind of approach God like he's some big Santa Claus in the sky. With this list of wants, even when those wants might run contrary to what we know God wants for our life. But listen, when you really look at that verse, like read it again. I think so often we miss the whole kind of point, the whole, you could say heart behind this verse. And it's right there at the beginning. Notice what it says. It says, delight yourself in what? In the Lord. Yeah, delight yourself in the Lord. In other words, you can't really enjoy life until you learn to first enjoy God. Because it's in learning to enjoy God that we find what our hearts desire most. What our hearts desire most. I can remember years ago traveling to Tanzania, and there were some things that really surprised me in Tanzania. That were kind of a culture shock I wasn't expecting. One is that when the pastor said that he was wrapping up, that didn't mean that he had like 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes to go. That meant that the clock was starting on 3 hours. You had 3 more hours before this service was wrapping up. Their concept of informal dress was very different. We went there to kind of do this kind of pastoral conference. There was thousands of these pastors that would come, and their concept of informal dress very different than my concept of informal dress. And for them, it was you had to dress in the full suit, like a full-on suit. Now, mind you, it's like 110 degrees, dirty. It's like sand everywhere. I mean, it was miserable. But here's another one that kind of surprised me, was their ideal of a grocery store. Like we think of a grocery store, like say going there to get like fresh meat, like you'll picture fresh meat as in the styrofoam, FDA approved, wrapped in plastic. Well, their concept of going to get fresh meat in a store was a slab of meat that had been killed and slaughtered like that morning, hanging on an unrefrigerated hook in this little marketplace. But that wasn't the thing that surprised me the most. The thing that I took away the most from that trip that surprised me like nothing else was the joy that I saw in their faces. The joy that these people in Tanzania, these people who were living in a third world country who had so little when it came to stuff, and yet how they had so much joy in their life. And listen, I think part of the reason why they were such a joyful community was because they understood something I think a lot of us miss. And that is this, that when God is all you need, you'll be surprised at how little you want. When you really come to understand God's all you need, you'll be surprised at how little you want. Can I just speak to those in the room today who feel like their life would be better if I just had blank? If I just had Mr. or Mrs. Right, or if I had just had that new car, or I had that new thing. Listen, can I tell you, what you think you need is not what you really need. What you think you need is not really what you need. That there's a void in your life that hotel rooms are not going to fill. There's a void in your life more stuff is not going to fill, that Teslas are not going to fill, the bigger homes not going to fill, the title's not going to fill. And in fact, it was actor Jim Carrey who recently quoted, he said this, he said, "I wish everyone could become rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so they can see it's not the answer." So you see, it's not the answer, that you've got a void in your heart and in your life that I promise you only God can fill. Only God can fill. And it's only when we allow Him to heal the heart issue, the emptiness, to fill the emptiness in our heart, that we can ever hope to begin to find the freedom from so much of the stress, so much of the anxiety that comes when we just live our life chasing after more stuff or more things or more whatever it is. Look, I want to pray for you today. And again, I don't know what the wrestling match is in your life, but if I could guess, probably there's more than a few of you that money, money, if you were honest, man, it's got a grip on you. Like you can identify with that the stress and the anxiety around it. Like even just when you heard what we were talking about tonight, like you just got this feeling in your gut that just rubs you the wrong way. Because could it be that the stuff that money provide or hopes to provide or promises to provide, the things that so many of us spend our life chasing after and pursuing, is something that was never meant to be found in that. Like money's a great tool, but it's a terrible taskmaster. That there's a joy, that there's a fulfillment, that there's a life that I'm telling you can't be found in more of whatever is out there, but can only be found when you allow God to do a work in here. But allow God to do a healing work to fill that void in your heart. And so if that's you, I want to give you an opportunity to experience a joy and a life that's found only in this relationship with Jesus, by simply praying this with me in your heart. Father, I recognize I've made more than a few mistakes in my life, but I believe you love me enough to leave heaven to come to earth to die on a cross, to pay a price in full for all my sin, all of my shame, past, present, future. And because of which, Jesus, I ask you to come into my life, and not just to be Savior of my life, but to be the Lord of my life, every part of my life, my relationships, my perspective, my attitude, even my finances. I give it over to you. I recognize that because I know that God, when I've encountered the reality, when I can say that God, you're all I need, it's amazing how little else I want, because I got it all in you. The joy, the fulfillment, the life that I've been desperately pursuing, it's all in you, in this relationship with you, Jesus. And so right now we give it over to you. In Jesus' name, amen. Why don't we stand up? Let's worship Jesus one last time.